Welcome back. Happy New Year. And yes, Horror Fiend TV starting with a bang with the first episode of season 2 of What's Your Story? And I am joined by my co host, the fourth corner herself, Lexi. Are you ready?
I am so ready for season two.
Yes, and we are starting off, like I said, with a bang and a film that, well, if you like disturbing games, made it to films, this is probably one for you.
Honey, sometimes when you go to sleep, you go on a little walk. And sometimes you talk about a place.
I don't remember.
Sharon! Sharon! Somebody! Help!
So the movie begins with, well, the sleepwalking, and we get to see a little bit of what's going on with Sharon and how concerned Rose is. So actually I have a question for you. Like, what were your thoughts about the opening sequence and Rose's decision to take Sharon to Silent Hill?
So the opening sequence for me, I have to be honest, is a little rushed because you get mother and father who, rightfully so, are worried about their child, but like they didn't even talk about the situation. She just ran off with the child. So as a father, I would be a little upset. Like, we didn't discuss this situation, but I get why. Like, as a mother, I want to help my child. So I get her point of view, but I also get his point of view because you saw him in the beginning. He's calling. He's like, where the heck are you? Why would you go? But then we'll get deeper in, but things start taking a turn and it gets darker. But the decision was made way fast and it all happened way fast. Now, it wasn't in a way of, it wasn't a turn of badness for me. Like, it wasn't, I say it's fast, but it's not in a bad way. It's straight to a point and getting to the story, as we're called. What's your story? But it was rushed as more so as a decision-making parental situation. That's what I feel on that take. But it got to a point where, okay, yes, I gotta help my kid, because you see her on the cliff, she's screaming, Silent Hill, Silent Hill, Silent Hill. So, like, as a mother, you definitely want to help. Father wants to help her in a different way, like, have a psychologist and get her help professionally, medically. But she just wants to figure out, what the heck is this Silent Hill? And so that's what this game and movie comes in.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting because it's not like she researched exactly what Silent Hill is.
Right.
She kind of just, I get the feeling like she didn't want her daughter to be medicated and just immediately go into that where, all right, I'm going to have a daughter who's constantly on drugs in order to stop whatever visions and dreams she's having about this place. And yeah, Christopher, played by Sean Bean, who, this guy never gets a break in films. If he's not dying in the first season, he's just bad luck. But yeah, it's just, he wants to go the route you usually go as a parent. You want to get your kid to help. And, Rose is at the point where she doesn't believe that there's anything they could do to calm this storm that's coming, that's happening inside Sharon. And it's just like one of those things. Once they hit the road, you're like, oh man, is this a good decision?
Like, I'm with the father, I get it, but I'm also kind of curious, like the mother. So
yeah, and this place, Silent Hill, it is probably, we'll talk about aspects of the game later, but as far as like just the visualization of Silent Hill, first of all, what do you think about the town? And second part of that question is like, what scenes that happen when Rose is going through Silent Hill that, well, kind of were your favorites?
So the town, I'm sorry, is so badass, and excluding the game, but the town in the film is so badass. It's eerie, it's foggy, you can't see which way you're going, and then you have all these monsters coming at you. And so, as a horror fan, it is completely creepy. I mean, it's almost alien-esque because you have these things coming at you with no arms. And so I loved the setup of walking to an empty town. And just a little fun fact of me, I'm very interested in like old buildings and hotels and just stuff like that. And so when they're going into an old town that nobody's been in for a while and it's completely abandoned, you want to know the history of it. And so I like the fact that we get that. And I just like the eeriness and the history of the story that you get from Silent Hill, and what the town was and what it looks like today. So I do like that.
Like, what scene really jumped
So
at you?
the scene that jumped at me is actually before everything goes down. It's the fact that she wakes up from that car crash. She's looking for her daughter, and she ends up in this alley that looks like a normal alley, but then the sirens go off, and then it completely turns the walls like whiskey color. And speaking of whiskey, it just turns into this whiskey brown color, and you're like, wait, what just happened? And it's going in between these, and this is the part I guess I feel can be confusing to people who aren't familiar with like the game and the movie and stuff. But it goes into this split image of, because you know the father ends up in town, and so he can't see where the mother is, the mother can't see where he is, and so they're in this split dimension basically. So I do like the part of her being in the alley and she's trying to figure out what the heck is going on inside this town. So to me, I liked the setup of the history of the town, and that's the scene that spoke out to me. But then in comes what everybody knows is Andrea from The Walking Dead. That part sticks out to me because she ends up on the other side of the bridge, and I'll let you dig into that.
Yeah, so if you don't know, so Silent Hill, what happened is it was a coal town, and there was a fire underneath the town that is still on, basically lit. Hence, you have all this ash, you have this like, it seems like snow consistently coming down the town. And the crazy part is like when Rose went into the town, she went right into the mist, to the the snow almost. But when Christopher went into town, there was no snow, there was nothing. He was
And
there.
that's what I'm saying. Like,
Yeah, this is the aspect, but yeah, which is crazy because the minute she came in, she went into that world where we'll talk later about Alyssa, kind of controlled in a way. But what I liked about the town is, yeah, you had the gloominess, you had just the feeling of dread, the feeling of hopelessness. So right off the bat, you got that feeling in this town. Even when Rose starts looking around for Sharon, you wonder will she ever find her.
Mm-hmm.
And then the siren was amazing. I mean, we'll talk about that in the game, but the fact that every time you heard these sirens, you knew evil was awakened. And later on, we'll find out exactly what siren did and what was the purpose of it. But like the scene I like is when she's actually, I think she was in the school, and there's these three guys dressed in suits, like in like coal miner suits, basically chasing her.
Right.
And they had a little like cage with a bird or something in it, and every time the bird would react, you knew it was time to get out. So you had this scene where she's basically trying to get out, and then she runs into them and they're getting eaten alive by rats. I mean, as a horror fan,
yeah,
this film was perfect as far as that aspect of horror. because one of the characters that this film introduced, but the game introduced, was the character of Pyramidhead. And the scene where he first comes out and shows himself, and you hear the sound of him dragging that giant sword. I mean, for me, I love that because when it comes to horror, I always like the introduction of characters over. I mean, this film had a lot of different creatures and stuff that you had the scene with the little kids that they were like burning and stuff, and
Right.
you had another scene where she's in the bathroom and she goes into one of the stall and there's a guy and
The best scene I feel in the movie.
yes, barbed wires. I mean, the guy's just twisted and stuff, and
Yeah.
he starts chasing her, and oh my god, there's so many great scenes in this film. But for me,
The
I think
walls
that,
like melting down and
yes,
stuff. Oh my
I
god.
love that the fact that that's how you knew evil was coming, how it just basically spread.
And the
And it,
siren sets it off. It
yes,
makes yeah.
yeah,
It's
and
one of the best scenes of the movie.
I mean, who doesn't like the nurses? That's
Hey.
yeah, that scene is cool. Yeah, there was so many good things about this scene. But for me, like I said, when the evil came, is even though Dark Alyssa, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, was the antagonist of the film, or was she? That's always a big question in this one. But the the Pyramid Head was just amazing. He was just like the muscle, the henchman, the one that was sent to destroy and kill. And every time he showed up was freaking awesome. I'll mention another scene later on with him, but yeah, I mean, it was very interesting. Just the whole surrounding. This is what's another aspect of stories in films is the environment, the scenery. You
Right.
know, the scenery itself was another character in this film,
hmm
which is it's always fun when you
And
get
that's what I
that.
was saying. Like the scenery, the history of it all
Yes.
is definitely a plus when it
Yeah.
comes to horror films. It's the
Yeah.
best scenery.
No, definitely. And the whole time she's walking around. Now, remember, you have her husband Christopher walk around with the cop,
hmm
and they're wearing masks. And there's that one point where Christopher goes, "Oh my god, I smell her perfume." And the guy goes, "Are you okay? Make sure you're breathing in the mask. Don't take off the mask." So here's Rose walking in those fumes, walking in this world
Right.
where her husband's on the other side, being cautious of what he's actually smelling. But yeah, there was so many good aspects of this film. And I think as the film kept going, we understood more and more what was going on. And then we finally get to the point where it's the last portion of the film, and we get to see the introduction of the character of Alyssa.
hmm
So I'm gonna ask you that question first. I mean, what did you think of the last portion of the film with the reveal of Alyssa?
So when they the part where the mother and the cop, they all go into the building and she swings over what she thought was her daughter, and it ends up being Alyssa, and they have this moment where they take her into a hospital room, and then that is the buildup for the very end of the film. Now, again, I mentioned you think the antagonist is Alyssa's mother, and you come to find out it's actually the head of the lady of the church. I forget her
Christabella.
name. Christabella. So in that moment, when I first watched the film, and this was eons ago, and then to refresh my memory, you forget, like, you get into this moment of, wait, who's the antagonist? I thought it was this witch, or well, everybody thought was a witch.
Yeah.
And then they reveal the fact that she's not the witch. This Christabella lady has been feeding the town lies after lies, and they're burning all the wrong people. And I don't know what her problem was, but she's burning all these people who are not witches. But the whole point of Alyssa is just revenge.
Yeah.
And so to have that reveal at the end where there's a connection between, Sharon and Alyssa. They did it so well because it's still, again, that two-dimensional situation with the characters and with the whole scenery. And so I like the fact that they did it that way. That's my thoughts on that. But what did you think of the whole arising at the end?
Well, I like the way it kind of set itself up, because you knew the fact that Sharon was Rose's adopted daughter, so he wasn't, her biological daughter. And the first time we see Dahlia is when Rose, and this is the great scene, when Rose walks out to the outskirts of the town.
This place is completely cut off.
And the road is basically destroyed, and she's just looking over what looks like an abyss. And Dahlia shows up, and then Rose tells her, "I'm looking for my daughter." And then she shows her a picture. No, she's mine. So you get this glance already, this little foreshadowing.
And that's how he's the antagonist.
Yes, yeah, you get the whole foreshadowing of who Sharon really is, and how she's familiar with Alyssa. Now, when we get the scene where, Rose is basically in the bowels of hell, in that room you have the nurse, I think her name was Anna, in the corner, and then you have Dark Alyssa show up, and she starts to explain, giving her the history of, Alyssa was getting picked on because thought she was a witch. The town basically burned her alive because they were blaming her for the apocalypse that never came, which, Rose confronts Christabella later on. And you get this whole history of the fact that they took Alyssa's daughter and they took her out of town to protect her from the people in the town. And then here you have Rose unknowingly brings her back to the town, which they kind of, Dark Alyssa exiled her from because she wanted to protect her. So then you get the whole thing where all Alyssa wants is revenge. Now, Alyssa cannot step grounds inside of a church because it's holy ground. So Rose makes a deal. In order to save Sharon, she'll let Dark Alyssa go inside her in order to make her way inside the town. Inside the church, and get her revenge. Now, the Christabella character is kind of unique because she lied a lot too. Because remember, when she told Rose that they want to help Sharon, but in order for her to help Sharon, she needs to go into the depths of basically the building they're in to find I think to find out the answer what's going on, and then eventually while she's down there is when they go after Sharon to basically burn Sharon. And yeah, it was so interesting because you have all this going on at the same time, and this is once again where you wonder, is Rose making the right decisions? Because so far every decision she's made has not been the greatest and has actually caused more harm than good, even though her intent was trying to save my daughter Sharon. I agree with you. Now remember that scene where she goes into the church, she confronts Christabella, accuses her of basically lying, telling all this whole flock that outside of Silent Hill there's nothing, because apocalypse came, there's nothing out there, which in reality she was keeping these people basically trapped in Silent Hill. So Rose confronts her, calls her a liar, in which Christabella ends up stabbing her. And what's the first thing she does? Drops the knife like she's innocent, like she's a blasphemer, she lied. And then you have
no sense.
Yeah, you have the oil it looks like oil coming out of Rose, which basically opens up the middle and unleashes Alyssa. Now, also, what was cool in that scene though was when Alyssa's coming up and she came up, you have Dark Alyssa coming up in the stairs. But let's go back into this this hell that Rose unleashed. That final scene in the church. What did you think about that whole scene?
Oh, I loved it. She got her revenge, and the fact, what it kind of reminded me of, and we just did this review months ago, but it reminded me of the elevator scene of Evil Dead, with the wires coming through and everything. But that's what it reminded me of. But I love that scene because she was able to finally get her revenge on a town that wrongfully criminated her, basically. So the fact that the part, and this is so gruesome, but this is Horror Fiend TV, guys. The fact that she was like praying, oh my God, please God, save me and keep me pure. And then she shoves the wires up her hoo-ha, sorry guys. And like, I love the scenery of just getting her revenge. And like, I mean, how gruesome can you get as a horror fan in a horror movie that's completely done so well? That's as gruesome as you can get. Like, just, I love the fury, the anger for her mother and for herself, not just for her mother, and the fact that she's protecting what do you want to call her twin, and their mother. So it's like it's a mom-daughter duo situation. But I love the fact that she's just getting revenge for herself, most likely, and then the fact that she's defending family. But I just love the fact that she just tore the bitch to pieces. And I mean, think about it. How many movies have we talked about during What's Your Story where there's crazy Christians and they get torn into pieces or they get killed? And so it's just like, this is the ultimate one that we've talked about where she's just tortured. And it's the best way to go out. So I love it.
Well, it's funny because the minute she lifted her up and then you have that scene, it kind of reminded me of Evil Dead. The tree scene.
Exactly.
First time I saw the movie, I was like, oh my God, this is Evil Dead.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I love that scene. But in particular, what I love about it is when she's getting torn into pieces, you have Dark Alyssa dancing underneath her, getting bathed in the blood, which was an awesome scene. And yeah, I mean, as far as
revenge,
oh God, as far as violence, this movie held nothing back in it, which I love because there's a lot of games that they're made into films and they hold back on some of the gore. And this movie did the right thing, deciding, you know what? This game is gory. This game is gruesome. This game pushes boundaries. Let's make it.
It really does.
Now, there's one particular thing that happens towards the end. You have the scene where, Rose is holding Sharon and you have Dark Alyssa coming at her. And then they end up both passing out and they awaken. And when they awaken, well, that's where this film takes a crazy route. So what did you think of the whole aspect of the minute she woke up to the minute she got home, as far as Rose and Sharon?
What did you think happened? Like, I think Alyssa took over. She wants to be back alive. And she might not get her mother, but she has a mother and she can live her life, the life she never got, the life that she was supposed to have, the one that she deserved, as any child does. But she was wrongfully convicted and that future was taken from her. So yeah, it's no longer Sharon.
You know what I liked about it though is the whole time they're going home, they're still stuck in the world of Silent Hill because the whole ride home is in that road
here.
Well, it's also in that snowy ash.
Exactly.
And the scene, then they get there and basically Christopher's waiting for them. She calls Christopher. The phone's staticky, so he can't even, understand who's calling, but he knows it's Rose. And then she gets home. It's in the transition back and forth between the two worlds was amazing. And then he sits down, then he ends up laying down on the couch and she walks in and you thought she was going to see him. In reality, she didn't see nothing. And she just sat there.
Little baby question. Do you feel like they're dead the entire movie?
Yes, I feel like they're still stuck inside. They never left Silent Hill. All she did was bring Silent Hill.
They died in the car accident is my theory.
Could be. I mean, it's. I think with the sequel, they explain a little bit more. I'll be honest, it's been a long time since I've seen the sequel, so
exactly.
I'm definitely gonna watch it. But I do believe that. See, that's a tough one because
I mean, think about it.
It's,
Because they get into a car accident with the cop, and the cop is in. She sees what they see. She's going through this journey with them, and trying to help and whatever and whatnot, and hearing the sirens and dealing with the monsters. But the husband doesn't, because he's alive. He's human. He's going through town that's abandoned. Has nothing to do with what they're experiencing. So my theory, like, if you're not the gamer and never played the game and you're going to in this fresh, you think from the beginning they've been dead the entire movie. And that's why they're in this weird
purgatory. They're stuck in purgatory.
Yeah, exactly. So when they return home at the very end and the husband can smell the perfume and can feel her around, they're dead. That's just my theory.
You know what's one great line in this film is when they're walking to leave the church, and Dahlia is sitting on the steps. And she says, why didn't she take me? Mm. And Rose looks at her and says, because you're her mother. Mother is God in the eyes of a child. Great line.
I love that one. Yeah.
That was, and I'll be honest, I use that line here and there. And I'm talking to, people and stuff, and, especially about, mothers and stuff. And I still use that line, but it is such an amazing line for the film. Mm-hmm. And if they would have ended it there, I would have been happy in a way, because then you ended on a perfect note going out. But it's a horror film, and being one of the few films where there's not really a happy ending, which I loved it because of that. No happy ending. But,
we're so good with that, aren't we?
Oh God, yeah. I mean, it's reality. Not everything ends in a happy story. Unfortunately, the Hollywood we have today, they want everything to end in a happy story.
We have a good knack of finding bad endings.
Yes.
Good
bad
endings.
Now the game came out in 1999 by Konami, and I remember when the game came out. And one of the things that I remember about the game is, when you heard the sirens as you're walking around, you hear these flapping wings. Mm-hmm. And you knew something was coming. You knew to get the hell out. But, I mean, did you play the game?
I did, with my father, actually. But I was young. I was probably my daughter's age, who's 14, or probably even younger. And so I don't quite remember, because it was on PlayStation 1. Yeah. Back in the day, so I don't quite remember everything, but I remember loving the game and playing with my father. Details, you don't pay attention to that as a kid, so I don't quite remember, but I do remember, like, the monster aspect, the story aspect, and I'm sure there's Easter eggs. Now, I do want to touch a little bit, and this is the reason why I wore my Halloween Horror Nights. So this year's, or last year's, 2023 Halloween Horror Nights was The Last of Us was in it. So this scene that's behind me reminded me a lot of The Last of Us, with the way they move, the way you heard the clicking, like the clickers in the show or the game. So I thought a lot of The Last of Us came from Silent Hill. And so, I was thinking about it before we started recording. I was thinking and comparing a little with Silent Hill and The Last of Us, and it just reminded me a lot of The Last of Us was taking a little bit from Silent Hill, the way that these nurses were moving, the way they were clicking, and the way they kill and stuff. And so you get a little, I felt like there was a lot taken, but there's no better game than Silent Hill. I remember as a child playing it with my father, just like how creepy it was, and like you said, with the wings flapping, you knew something was coming. You didn't know what direction it was coming from, but you knew something was coming. Now with the film, you hear the siren, and you have like every type of monster coming at you. You have the whole scene melting from you. Let's touch on Pyramidhead for a second. Like, he's such a badass from the game to the film. They put him spot on. I mean, do you remember anything from the game to today, or?
I remember some of it. I remember running into Pyramidhead the first time, and I kind of, I was kind of screwed. I knew I was gonna die. So I
Yeah.
kind of turned it off a couple of times because I knew I had no chance. I kind of rage quit. But
Yeah.
it's funny because when this game came out a little bit after Resident Evil, and
Hmm.
those are the two like founding like survival horror games.
Right.
Because Resident Evil came out, and Resident Evil was just as scary, as freaky. I mean, so I scenes in first Resident Evil, I'm like, oh my god. And then Silent Hill came out, and Silent Hill took this whole environment instead of what's like, Resident Evil, the zombies and stuff. Silent Hill was like, all right, let's put a fog, let's put something where you can't see what's coming, and you have to actually listen and use your other senses when something's coming, which I love that aspect because
Exactly.
it,
That's why I
freaked me out,
pointed
yeah.
out the history of the buildings and the town. Like nobody's been there for God knows how long, and that's why I like that they were not so focused on character. They were more focused on the town itself. Like it was its own haunting. It was its own character.
Yeah. All right, let's wrap this up now. What we do in What's Your Story is, the films we pick are very story driven. Now, in order to have a very good story driven film, you also have to have characters, environment, everything, and roll it up into one. And stories are what makes great film. Now, there are some horror films where there are no storylines because, well, they're not meant to have a storyline. But here on What's Your Story, we go after the ones that have the storylines. Because me and Lex are one of the few on this channel that actually
You gotta have a point.
well, we enjoy sometimes the slow burns, even though this was not a slow burn. But we do enjoy the slow burns. We do enjoy the storytelling aspect of films. So, Lexi, 1 through 5, give your overall thoughts of the film. Any last thoughts you have. As what's your rating for this one?
So yeah, final thoughts. Definitely a 5 out of 5. I mean, there's no question about it. Again, I'm gonna keep saying it. It's the history, the way they had the setting, and I believe it was shot in Canada. Now, I do want to point out one part in the movie that we didn't quite touch on. The part where they run into the extra little characters. I forget her name. Where she's throwing stones at the witch, Sharon's mom, or I'm sorry, Alyssa's mom. And before they go into that building to see the situation of the stone throwing, you get this grand picture of the hotel that they're at. Now, that hotel is the Grand Hotel. I believe it's now called the Lister's Hotel in Ontario, Canada. Now that hotel has been investigated by Ghost Adventures. So as soon as I saw that scene, I was like, wait a minute, I had to pause immediately. And I started researching. I was like, I knew I've seen this hotel before. So I'm kind of interested more. And like I said in the beginning, I am very fond of old buildings and schools, which was another one, that the school that she entered in with the barbed wire guy. But I love the fact that they used the town in such a way of just feeling the era of whatever that era was, where Christabella was burning people, to today, and it still didn't how do I say it? It didn't age. You know what I mean? Like it stayed in its era. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like I love the fact that it's a 5 out of 5. What are your final thoughts?
For me, overall, I mean, the characters were great in this film. I don't think there's even the side characters were good.
Yeah.
Christabella was a very good antagonist of this film because of the fact that, not for nothing, the irony of it, where you have somebody who is using fear in religion and hides, ironically, in the church. Which you're committing constant sins by lying, but yet you shield yourself in the church to protect yourself from the sins you've committed.
She was badass as a villain.
She was, and she didn't care. She knew she had to control these people. Rose was amazing. Rhoda Mitchell is always an amazing actress, and she's always had great roles. And I mean, Sean Bean, I mean, I feel bad for the guy because, like I said, the guy never catches a break in a film. Either
Right.
he dies or he's suffering through some stuff. Um, but yeah, as far as like the storyline, great storyline. I mean, if you played the game, you enjoyed the storyline of the game, and then it's brought into film, which this is one of the best translations from video game to film.
The best adaptions, yeah. For sure.
And it was fun to watch. When I found out they were making a film, I was so excited. I couldn't wait to see it. And when I saw it, I was like, oh my god, this is great. Now, like I said, I haven't seen Revelations, the second one, in a while.
Mhm.
I see it now because I remember Revelations being more gruesome than this one.
Right.
But yeah, I mean,
But again, with the game out of it, this movie was done perfect.
oh yeah, I mean, even if you didn't play the game, this is still a perfect film. If you have
Mhm.
if you never tried the game at all, this is a very good film in that aspect because it is captivating. The scenery of it, the look of it, you know, like just like I said before, the eeriness, the dread of it, the basically no hope. You feel, I mean, you would feel lost and you feel like you just want to give up walking in that town.
Mhm.
The CGI special effects, awesome in this film.
Mhm.
I mean, one of the things we talk about a lot is the CGI and how in the late
We're not a big fan of it.
90s, yeah, early 2000s, it wasn't the greatest,
Mhm.
but this film still holds till now. It actually aged well,
Mhm.
and it's good. I mean, the special effects are good. The kill scenes are amazing.
Mhm.
The different creatures, like those little kids freaked me out. I'm sorry. They're going after her and stuff, and I would have went through that fence. I would have found a way to get through that fence because you got these kids coming at you and they're starting to burn.
Oh,
They
fact.
starting, oh my god, hell no. I'm going through that fence. But yeah, I mean, overall, it's yeah, for me, it's a 5. Now before we would tell you what we're going to talk about in the next episode, but just like a lot of things, we'd rather leave you on a cliffhanger. That way, make you wonder what we talk about. Maybe we'll drop a little hint later on. But yeah, I mean, are you ready for this season? Because I'm excited about this one.
I am so excited for the season. You know, Happy New Year, horror fiends. I am starting off with whiskey because I'm actually sick. It's been a great start to the new year, but yeah, I'm excited for What's Your Story season 2, and we have a lot of great films lined up.
Yes.
Some we've seen together, some I haven't seen, so we'll see.
Now, if there's anything we missed about this film, feel free to comment below, and we will get back to you and definitely let you know what our thoughts are on any question you have or any scenes that you feel like we should have talked about a little bit more. But yeah, definitely,
Remember the game.
definitely, yeah. Give us a little thing about the game. What part of the game did you like? And what part of the game kind of freaked you out the most? But yeah, don't forget, share, like, and leave a comment below. This is JR with the fourth corner, Lexi.
Hi.
First episode down, 11 more to go for this season of What's Your Story. Have a good one. What a good way to start the year. Morphine TV, What's Your Story? Ready? 1, 2, 3. Peace.
Salud.